During the past decade, there have been many major scandals involving doctors who have molested both male and female patients at colleges and universities. At the University of Southern California, Dr. Tyndall; at UCLA, Dr. Heaps; at the University of Michigan, Dr. Anderson; and at Ohio State University, Dr. Strauss. There are also major cases ongoing that involve doctors who have molested hundreds of children in clinics. In Pennsylvania, Dr. Johnny Bardo. The Roman Catholic Church, the military, the Boy Scouts, colleges, and universities, they all have withered under the spotlight of sexual misconduct scandals and promised that abuse will no longer be swept under the carpet. The medical profession, however, has never taken on sexual misconduct as a significant priority, and layer upon layer of secrecy makes it nearly impossible for the public or even the medical community itself to know the extent of physician sexual abuse. In a national investigation, the Justice in America network TV series staff examined documents that describe disturbing acts of physician sexual abuse in every state. Rapes by OB/GYNs, seductions by psychiatrists, fondling by anesthesiologists and ophthalmologists, and molestations by pediatricians and radiologists. Some doctors were disciplined over a single episode of sexual misconduct. A few physicians with hundreds of victims are among the nation's worst sex offenders. But the toll can't be measured by numbers alone. For patients, the violations can be life-altering. The betrayal even pushed some to suicide. How do doctors get away with exploiting patients for years? Because some victims say nothing. Intimidated, confused, or embarrassed, they fear that no one will take their word over a doctor's. Colleagues and nurses stay silent. Hospitals and healthcare organizations brush off accusations or quietly push doctors out, the investigation found, without reporting them to police or licensing agencies. Society condemns sexual misconduct by most citizens and demands punishment. But when a physician is the perpetrator, the nation often looks the other way. Physician-dominated medical boards give offenders second chances. Prosecutors dismissed or reduced charges so doctors could keep practicing and stay off sex offender registries. Communities rallied around them. The medical profession has never taken on sexual misconduct as a significant priority. Over and over again, records show predatory physicians took advantage of a doctor's special privilege. The daily practice of asking trusting people to disrobe in a private room and permit themselves to be touched. Sexual conduct between a doctor and a patient, even if ostensibly consensual, is strictly forbidden. In ethical terms, it's a never event. In a legal sense, it can be a crime. Physicians know it's a line that can't be crossed. Its prohibition is as old as the Hippocratic Oath. Only 11 states have a law requiring medical authorities to report to police or prosecutors when they suspect a sexual crime has been committed against an adult. Secrecy is the enemy, and that enemy is at work today when it comes to abusive doctors. It takes dedicated lawyers like Manley, Stewart, and Finaldi to hold them accountable and obtain compensation for their victims. They will discuss a broken system that forgives sexually abusive doctors in every state, why a national tracking system doesn't show the extent of physician sexual misconduct, why sexual misconduct is difficult to uncover, how predatory physicians get away with their crimes, what constitutes a sexual assault, how often do medical professionals commit acts of sexual assault against patients, who is liable if you are sexually assaulted by a doctor, what you should do if you were sexually assaulted by your doctor, and other relevant and important issues. In this insider exclusive Justice in America Network TV special, Justice in America, America's Predator Doctors Crisis, Our news team is on location with John Manley, founder and partner at Manley, Stewart and Finaldi, and Morgan Stewart, partner, and Courtney Tom, as well as some of their clients, to discuss these issues. Manley, Stewart and Finaldi is the nation's leading firm representing patients sexually assaulted by doctors. They have recovered nearly $2.5 billion in compensation for patients since 2018. They have served or are serving as lead counsel in these cases. Dozens of officials at the USAG, the USOC, and MSU resigned under pressure or were fired. Some faced criminal charges, though few were convicted. The scandal led to the Protecting Young Victims from Sexual Abuse. In 2018, MSU agreed to pay $500 million to settle lawsuits accusing university leaders, including its president and athletic director, of enabling Nassar's abuse. In 2021, the USOPC and the USAG settled lawsuits brought by more than 500 athletes for $380 million. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Orange County, California. It is my great pleasure to introduce John Manley and Morgan Stewart to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve.
Tell our audience, John, and I've known you for many, many years, but tell our audience a little bit about your firm. What's your primary practice?
So our firm, Manley, Stewart and Finaldi, specializes in childhood sexual abuse and adult sexual abuse. So what we do is we represent victims and survivors of sexual abuse, ranging from small children all the way to adults who are sexually assaulted. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing that work since 1997.
Right, and you've had cases, Morgan, that span schools, churches, the Boy Scouts, the whole 9 yards, the Olympics, right? What do you find the toughest part to prosecuting these cases?
The emotional aspect. I mean, it's tangible and real to victims of, you're not just dealing with corporations, you're dealing with people's lives, and that's probably the toughest part of litigating the cases.
There are still people, John, that don't want to come forward after they've been sexually abused because they're shamed, right? How do you deal with that? How do you convince somebody that they should get justice?
I don't want to try to convince anybody to do this. What I want to do is give them their options, and if filing a lawsuit to hold their perpetrator and the institutions that enabled them accountable is part of that process, we're happy to do it. What I say to clients is, and I think the perception is by a lot of people that lawyers and clients in these cases are just chasing money. That's not what we do. And I tell our clients, look, what you want to chase is healing. A jury can smell in 2 seconds if your goal is money. For the vast majority of our clients, they want some kind of accountability and justice. And by doing that, in a way, it can be very healing. Forcing your perpetrator to sit across the table from you, or even on a Zoom, and having a lawyer ask the serious questions that need to be asked, can be very empowering and very healing. And the reality is that when this happens to you as a child or as an adult, it's essentially emotional murder. It affects you for the rest of your life. So we want to be a part of that process to bring accountability and healing, by what we do. And I think I'm proud to say we're exceptionally good at it.
As you both know, I've done a lot of cases, different practices, and I remember 15 years ago when we first met, I realized that to you, this is a mission. So I remember when I was interviewing the folks at the Innocence Project, and I was asking them, how much longer are you going to do this? My question to you is, you'll do it forever, won't you?
Yeah, sadly, I think Morgan and I and others in the firm all agree that we could do this forever because there's no shortage of it. And what I've discovered doing this over the last 30 years is this is a no bullshit public health problem. We have a serious problem in this country with adults abusing children. It's in institutions. And frankly, the laws and the courts haven't dealt with it appropriately. And I think a lot of if you go to prisons, if you look at homelessness, if you look at a lot of the social ills that plague this country, what you're going to find is a huge majority of those people were sexually assaulted as children.
It's a public health problem. Okay, what's the solution?
Well, I think the answer is, number one is, for example, teachers. Teachers get a background check when they're hired, and then no one looks at them again. The number of public school teachers that are being arrested for this across the country is staggering. When I started doing these cases, if you'd have told me that we have districts where we have not a few, but dozens of perpetrators in public schools, I would have been shocked. It's commonplace for people to believe that if you prove somebody abused somebody, then you win. That's not what it is. That's not the way it works. In order to show liability, also known as civil guilt, of a school district or an institution that harbors a pedophile, you have to show either negligence or they knew or should have known that this person was abusing children. In every one of these cases that we try or settle, we've proved that there was knowledge, that the institution knew and hid it.
And that's a big question I want to ask you. Proved. How? Because oftentimes complaints will be issued, correct? Mm-hmm. And somebody will have a forgetful memory. I don't remember that. Or they won't investigate it. How do you prove it?
Number one, you prove frequently the survivor themselves reports. Mm-hmm. So if the survivor reports, that's enough. But oftentimes it's the documents. I mean, you'd be stunned at how often there's a report to a principal, a vice principal, another teacher, all of whom...
All documented,
all in their documents, and they do nothing. They're all mandatory reporters under the law.
Now, we've talked about what the administrators should do. Let's talk about some of the clients that you've represented. After you settle a case, win a case, do you keep in contact? Do they keep in contact with you?
I keep in contact with clients going back 10, 15 years.
The other question is, no matter how much money someone gets, they still may be troubled. You and I have talked about this many times. They may have dysfunctional relationship with other people throughout their life. Yeah. They may become addicts, using alcohol. How do you deal with that?
What makes us different is that, we're not car crash lawyers. We're not product liability lawyers. We're not business lawyers. This is all we do. The law in this area is complex, and I think largely because of some of our larger settlements, we've seen a lot of other lawyers who do all kinds of various other things market themselves as sexual abuse lawyers. And they're free to do that. The problem with that is that, number one, you don't understand the law. Number two, you can't bring a client and go, well, what did he do to you? Did he rape you? You don't do that. This is, what happened to these people is incredibly traumatic, and you want to be very careful how you speak to them. You want them to hopefully only have to tell their story once. And you don't want this process to re-traumatize them. So, we struggle very hard to make sure that the client gets the help they need, both in the process and afterwards. The whole point of the money is to get them the help they need to recover their humanity. What most people don't really appreciate is, and I say it all the time, sexuality is part of our humanity. It's the way we express love. And when you take somebody's ability away to love, it's profound. And so we're very conscious of that. And this is, for us, this is not just another case. It's our vocation. It's what we do. And everybody in this firm, to a person, believes in our mission.
Let me ask both of you this. You know, you get a lot of phone calls, right? You know, they read about you in the newspaper. What should victims do first if they're sexually assaulted?
The answer is report it to law enforcement. Go to,
Even if they're a child, they report it to their parents.
report it to parents, go to law enforcement. I mean, almost universally, our goal as a firm should be and is the utmost criminal prosecution of any perpetrator.
So all the material that you guys collect in discovery, you obviously give it to the DA.
I can tell you,
You want them to prosecute.
We want them to prosecute.
as do the clients, we don't look for DA's help. I don't need their help to win my case. What I want to do is give them everything I have that'll help them. And the Nassar case was a really good example of that. We worked hand in glove with the State Attorney General's office. Unfortunately, Los Angeles County, it's very difficult to work with the DAs there, not because the line DAs don't want to, it's because the leadership is indifferent to the plight of victims.
I'm just astonished at that. I mean, you read about it in the newspaper, you won a lot of cases, you know, both of you, and don't they see it?
Well, let me give you an example. George Tyndall, they arrested him, and I think he was held for 6 years without a trial. All of those victims were let down. And that's George Gascon's fault. That's the DA's fault. And they let him die. He was in custody, I think, for a week or a month, and then they gave him home arrest. And he was allowed to live his life in a luxurious apartment in LA, while these victims have to suffer with it. USC paid $1 billion to settle that case, and yet he was never held accountable. Mm-hmm. To me, that's somebody not doing their job. On the other hand, we have DAs all over the country who are awesome, mm-hmm. who want to work with us, want to get this person charged and put away. So the first thing I do when we get a call, and I think Morgan does as well, is say call law enforcement. We frequently represent clients under Marsy's Law, which is a unique statute to California and a few other states, where the client has a right to a lawyer, a private lawyer in the criminal process, and we protect them. It takes courage to do that, but it's really important. One of the reasons Harvey Weinstein got away with what he did, his lawyers were, willingly taking, $250,000 and forcing their clients to sign an NDA. He got away with it. It should have been reported to law enforcement. And our job as adults, our first job, is to stand between our children and our children in the community and those who would hurt them. That's our job, and that's law enforcement's job, and we should be doing it.
One last thing. When folks do call you, how do you determine the cases you're going to take? Because you've got everybody calling you now.
Yeah, unfortunately, we turn away a lot of cases, and we look for indicators. We look for law enforcement involvement. We look for a history. We don't always take cases that we know we can win, but we take cases that we feel strongly about, that where there's strong indications of entity involvement or entity failure. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have it all prepared to go, and we got to do discovery and we got to figure it out. But we take cases that we think are righteous and fit within the mission as a firm.
I want to thank both of you to be on the show. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.